Welcome back to the techno-communism conversation. I'm going to welcome back to the techno-communism conversation. I am going to talk a little bit more about China and its admirable work in the Belt and Road Initiative, and how such a thing could come to be transformed into a springboard for the kind of cybernetic socialist development, namely the AI agentic class network work groups, having transformative impact on our future society, near future society, and so this is from the Belt and Road to a global utopia, leveraging advanced computing for cybernetic socialism, or in the title you saw BRICS, another term related closely to China, but we changed it to Belt and Road Initiative Cybernetic Socialism. China's very ambitious Belt and Road Initiative showcases its prowess in large-scale infrastructure projects on many continents. This essay proposes a transformative vision utilizing advanced computing developments within China's very AI-focused ecosystem to transform the Belt and Road Initiative into a springboard for a global AI agentic class network utopia. And that is a world free from drudgery or want, facilitated by AI agentic class networks, which is a proposal of mine that basically is something that could be done quite easily today. There are already in June of 2024 highly agentic open source large language model chatbots that you can download, and they can be specially tailored to work in a larger group. And this work group could be overseen by the people who have downloaded them, allowing this group to do more with less and operate on a click-through process principle, where they would leave the AI agents online, up and running and connected to the network, and they would themselves then answer some handful of questions throughout the course of a day or week, relatively simple questions, perhaps yes or no questions, but nevertheless it would be doing a very high level work, beyond that of, say, really anyone alive today, where most of us are kind of forced to participate in, we might think of ourselves as doing good work, but we're mostly forced to participate in a system that is, in the West particularly, causing the demise of our species. So that really kind of work can really not be considered to be good or useful work in that context. So the idea of something like the AI agentic class networks is to ultimately build something of the agility and strength to end that existential risk of capitalism's climate apocalypse. And so by analyzing the potential applications of advanced computing and infrastructure development and fostering responsible AI development, China could be the one, and I think is quite likely to be the one, to lead the way toward a just and equitable world through this established discipline called cybernetic socialism, which I have tried to add a unique perspective to on this channel. The Belt and Road Initiative serves as a foundation, potential foundation for the near term, for integrating advanced computing, transforming construction processes and optimizing resource allocation, and ultimately enhancing efficiency, safety, and sustainability throughout the world and throughout its many systems. Advanced computing-powered infrastructure development could be helpful in project planning and design. AI simulations can optimize layouts, predict potential risks, and allocate resources dynamically. Could be helpful in construction management and automation. Intelligent robots can handle repetitive tasks, while advanced computing-powered monitoring systems can ensure structural integrity and prevent accidents. Also in maintenance and operation, predictive maintenance, and as with a variety of predictive analytic applications, can use advanced algorithms to minimize downtime and ensure smooth infrastructure operation. And so the dream of a cybernetic socialist utopia, I believe, is not a far-off dream, as utopians generally have been, but something in the wake of the present AI takeoff. Although it is largely a thing of the bourgeois today, we can reclaim it. And so in the wake of this present AI takeoff, cybernetic socialist utopia, I think, is a real prospect in a few short years, possibly, if we organize and demand such a thing in great numbers. Cybernetic socialism would postulate a future where advanced computing in the form of things like AI agentic class work groups, although cybernetic socialism, of course, focuses more on the technological planned economy, the discipline itself. The AI agentic class network is an idea of mine. But nevertheless, cybernetic socialism is a cybernetic socialist world is one that automates much more labor, but also does so in a way that does not grow the billionaire class, as has been the case under capitalism, but actually frees humans from drudgery and want, and a globally implemented set of safety net systems, universal basic services and income guarantees would ensure a basic standard of living for all peoples on every continent. And I think when you grow a thing of this kind to that scale, that becomes very reasonable, as even integrating into existing nation states, and utilizing advanced computing for infrastructure projects and human-centered projects begins to pave the way for this vision. Cultivating cybernetic socialism in order to build a AI agentic class network utopia. As AI agentic class networks, or some equivalent based on other computing technology, perhaps, as it develops, automates more and more tasks. This global provisioning of universal basic services, which is a relatively term in relatively recent use, universal basic services, but it basically just describes the functioning of state socialism of the standards of 100 years ago. 1924 was when the Soviet Union really kicked into gear. So we don't really need a fancy word for this, but like a lot of things in capitalism, under capitalist realism, they'll use another word other than the ones associated with state socialism, because those words are basically taboo, tending to be taboo, which is absurd. But under this universal basic services, we could see that high standard living is ensured for all people, regardless of employment status. And I would view this kind of participation of maybe the click-through process of a few hours in the course of a week as a form of high-level employment. I believe that by and large, people, even if they were not contributing to the demise of our species and runaway overheating of capitalism's climate apocalypse in their work and lifestyles, I would still tend to think of their work as largely being make work of little consequence. So we can restructure these systems to better to better value people's time, and most importantly, not alienate them from their labor, and see a true standard of living, which is not really seen anywhere in the world. to the level that I think it could. But certainly, China has made real inroads there, dramatically so, on the order of magnitude of the accomplishment of the USSR, doubling life expectancy in a quarter of a century, lifting 1 billion people out of poverty, as commonly said. And their experience with using social safety nets to do this could inform the design and implementation of a universal basic services scheme based on the AI agentic class network growing out of, say, starting in a city like Beijing, which has approximately 3 million GPU, networked computer GPU users. That's to say the kind of computer that would be best used for something like the AI agentic class network. And so 3 million people on this network would be able to do a tremendous amount of work, perhaps already being able to begin to spearhead the project of ending capitalism's climate apocalypse and the risks associated with runaway overheating and climate instability. This a lot of times these shows kind of presupposes solid understanding of multi-agent systems, and that may not necessarily be the case, but this is effectively a multi-agent system growing into a decentralized organization, and I am not that set of concepts is fundamentally anarcho-syndicalist. I am not an anarcho-syndicalist. I'm a scientific socialist. I support state socialism until such time as the withering of the state, because full communism has been achieved, which, as I said, I think could be achieved in the wake of this AI takeoff in a relatively few years, with cooperation of a lot of human beings. But as I've said on this show before, the anti-communist / fascist West, led by its villainous ringleader, the United States, is very good at sabotaging centralized projects of the humane and sustainable economic kind. And for example, I was talking with some folks about this today. From 1971 to 1973, Salvador Allende and Stafford Beer and many other fine cybernetic socialists began working on something called Cybersyn in Chile, which was a building of a technological planned economy of relatively rudimentary kind by our standards. It was using telex machines, which they had a surplus of there, and so they were able to use these telex machines to completely rearrange the economic system, and they were planning to roll this out across the country. The fascist United States was none too pleased about that, because this could have been a moment like the moment of the early Soviet Union, where the rest of the world suddenly realized that state socialism could actually be a thing, and not just something that was talked about and written about. And it also did indeed accomplish this thing of doubling life expectancy in 25 years and transforming this country from a country of peasants into a country of engineers and scientists with a tremendous industrial output. And the world's knowledge and understanding of this inspired a lot of people, and I think that the existence of this technological planned economy of Salvador Allende and company would have done the same thing. And I know that the fascistic ruling elites of the United States and North Atlantic countries were afraid of that, and that is the main reason that that country, that Salvador Allende was overthrown by Augusto Pinochet in a coup that had devastating effects on that country and the region, but I believe an equally devastating, and not in terms of loss of life, which is a true horror, but devastating in terms of the lost potential that I just mentioned of the world pivoting towards cybernetic socialism is also incalculable and horrific. So the development of a more sophisticated a technological planned economy on this basis, and this thing that would be agile and amorphous enough to say avoid being destroyed by the fascist United States. That's the most important thing that any scientific socialist should do in any context, is avoid getting murdered by the United States. So that is something that has guided my thinking in trying to write about the AI agentic class work group, and ultimately the AI agentic class network as a basis for a world revolution. A shift toward an AI agentic class network fully realized as a utopia would necessitate a global education revolution. China in Beijing could contribute to this by promoting the use of these open source downloadable large language models and education about machine learning and the use of skill sets today described as maybe prompt engineering, or the natural language processing skill sets associated more and more with computer programming, which is no longer so much requires the learning of new languages, but can be used more in conjunction with these chatbots that kind of mediate some of that specialized language skill. And that same essential principle could be applied to the running of, would necessarily be applied to the running of the larger scale AI agentic class network. Finding other ways to foster global collaboration toward the building of a transcontinental force that is the AI agentic class network, which, even if it began in China, would not necessarily need to focus only on Chinese matters, although that probably would be the tendency of China. China is not operate on the same principle as the Soviet Union. That is to say, the Soviet Union would not correctly have been described as a nation state, although ignorant Westerners would tend to describe it that way. It was something more aspirational, a union of nations in an internationalist undertaking, ultimately hoping to lead to the uniting of all human beings. And China, again, more than anything, in hoping to avoid conflicts with the fascist West, has tended to, in recent decades, avoid that more revolutionary set of strategies, and probably in doing something like this would tend to focus on their own affairs to a high degree. Although, as we mentioned, the Belt and Road Initiative suggests a significant departure in certain limited respects, the building of infrastructure, from that strategy of the late 20th century. Ethical considerations in global governments and considerations for global governance using AI agentic class networks. I've said this before, we have to focus first and foremost on environmental sustainability and this bourgeois AI takeoff and the development of large U.S. corporations building large language models. Sustainability has not been the focus. They are major users of water and power. They are not sustainable at all. But we can abolish the corporation, and we can wrest these tools away from them and develop them more sustainably, and also the large language model as open source downloadable product distributes many of those resources into existing infrastructure, that of citizens I believe mitigates some of those problems. Um, um, the global governance structure, the AI agentic class network evolving into global governance structures would require that we focus on seeing that the AI agentic class network is not sabotaged, does not begin to experience something like a mass AI hallucination where it does things that it thinks are good but are not, which would be pretty easily avoided by having competent people at the center of the project, and keeping that from happening at all times. Technological hurdles and societal resistance to the AI agentic class network. The AI agentic class network as a global governance structure does require more advancements in advanced computing. However, as I said, we have large language models which are significantly more agentic than they were last year, and by the end of the year, even more so into 2025. So I think that there's no excuse for not beginning to build this thing with the specific aspiration of transforming institutions in every nation immediately. We have 5 years before we reach runaway overheating caused by capitalism's climate apocalypse, where there will be a multi-billion person loss of life in the decades to follow, if not full human extinction. And we're experiencing that now every year at this time of year. There is a number of articles that you'll read that will say this is the hottest summer on record, and it's going to continue for the rest of your life. Hotter and hotter summers, more and more climate instability and dislocation of populations, loss of life, which is already a very real factor, particularly for people in the global south who virtually have no footprint relative to the global northerner, have no multinational corporations of the kind that have caused this problem, such as those in the U.S. or its military-industrial complex. That's the world's worst polluter. The U.S. Pentagon is the world's worst polluter. And nevertheless, they are the ones who will pay the price for your sins as a global northerner. And we have to reverse that before it becomes a truly catastrophic situation. Achieving globally implemented universal basic services, or this essentially anarcho-syndicalist approach to the functioning of what is essentially state socialism, and establishing a robust advanced computing governance framework will require a great deal of international cooperation. And China is well positioned to play a leading role in facilitating those dialogues, promoting transparency and collaboration with other nations. A world of possibility awaits, and that is a world where we have a sustainable and equitable economic system. And I believe that this can be done with things like the AI agentic class network, mediating most labor tasks, so that humanity, while still involved with the day-to-day running of these things in ways that were not possible. One criticism of anarchist idealism is that you cannot have a city with millions of people in it all participating in a full democratic process. It's taking up too much of their time, and also it's an unwieldy kind of institution. That's so there has to be some kind of representation there generally. But in this case, the representation is the digital doppelganger or AI agent, who is able to never sleep and do a good deal more work than you, and thus can represent your interests in real time without you actually having to be involved in that. Nevertheless, not really any loss on your part for not having that full involvement. This frees the individual to pursue more speculative projects in the sciences, or the arts, or individual exploration, or just living their social lives in a way that they are not able to today. This is a sustainable, just, and equitable AI agentic class network utopia that is, I think, achievable within a decade, coupled with a global framework for the provisioning of universal basic services and income guarantees and necessaries, and focusing on social justice for oppressed peoples today. This must be a focus of the early work of such a thing as the AI agentic class network, and it should be its emphasis all along. But that is another essay. But by narrowing the wealth gap and empowering individuals in the way I've described, we can create a society where everyone has an opportunity to thrive, rather than being pushed closer and closer to oblivion as we are today. The benefits of something like the Belt and Road Initiative as a path to this, or a way of visualizing this. The Belt and Road Initiative could be a catalyst for global development of cybernetic socialism, if China continues to prioritize sustainable development, investing in local economies, and utilizing this agile tool of the AI agentic class network to those ends. Make no mistake, my friends, the AI, the advanced computing products, are the most powerful revolutionary tools that ever existed, and they have been perverted by this bourgeois class of technologists of the United States and West into something that is really serving little function except to grow a billionaire class. And we need to reclaim those things and restore them not as reactionary tools but as revolutionary tools. And we can do that through things like the AI agentic class network, which I believe could lead to an effective world revolution in a short order, and what would be a full communist utopia shortly thereafter, potentially. And I think that this kind of visualization presents a compelling argument for beginning the work of building this world free of toil and want today, and by leveraging its already significant advanced computing expertise and taking a leadership role through existing channels like the Belt and Road Initiative. China has the potential to play a pivotal role in building this fully realized utopia in our time. However, this journey requires a global commitment to responsible advanced computing development, new approaches to fostering international collaboration, and of course many technological and practical considerations along the way. But by working together, we can create a future where advanced technology empowers humanity, leading to a more just, equitable, and sustainable world for all. Thank you.